Back to Hardball now. More on the situation in Ferguson, Missouri. Michael Brown's death has ignited a fire which has raged for 12 days now, at times violently, of course. As Eugene Robinson writes in the Washington Post, for the black community in Ferguson, there is a, quote, sense of being left behind. The poverty rate in Ferguson has more than doubled since the year 2000 as the community has gone from 3/4 white to 2/3 black. We're seeing a dramatic growth in economic disadvantage all across the country in suburban, inner suburban areas like Ferguson. More than half of the 46 million Americans living in poverty right now live in the inner suburbs. Poverty and economic inequality have bred a deep-seated sense of unfairness and injustice in many of these communities. We're seeing that in Ferguson. It's no wonder that racial tensions can set them ablaze, as we've seen there too. As Eugene Robinson wrote in the Washington Post, the fire this time is about invisibility. Brown had no police record. He had graduated from high school. He was about to enter a technical college. Given where he had come from, it's hard to do a whole lot better and easy to do a whole lot worse. And now that the streets are filled with incoherent rage and the rioting must be strongly condemned, we can see Brown struggle momentarily. At least after the smoke clears, we will be blind once again. So much for that. So how can we fix the problem? Well, how about jobs? Eugene Robinson joins us now along with Congresswoman Karen Bass, a Democrat from California whose district is at the site of the 1992 Rodney King riots in Los Angeles. Thank you. I want to start with Eugene, Congresswoman, just because he's been writing about this so well. Give us a sense, and then respond to that, Congresswoman. What, if you were President of the United States, if you had a Congress that believed in action and creating jobs, and taking these kids who are 18 years old, these regular kids, maybe troubled but regular. How do you help them find a career in this country?
Well, you know, there's no one sort of magic remedy that, or one thing you could do to have guaranteed success. It really takes a more holistic approach because there are lots of factors involved. There's education, there's employment, there's transportation, there's housing, there's health. There's a lot of things. You know, one idea I had actually, it's, you know, you got to have jobs. Where are those blue-collar jobs that generations use?
Before we went on tonight, we were comparing notes about people who live in big cities. 2 generations ago, for sure, maybe one, you could come out of high school with a C or B average, go get a job at the plant, and provide for a family.
Exactly, and you'd have job security and a good wage, so you could send your kids to college, and you'd have a pension when you retire.
And now?
And now those jobs don't exist. That's a fairy tale. It just doesn't happen. It especially doesn't happen in these impoverished and increasingly forgotten neighborhoods. And so, you know, let's have an infusion of capital. Now, where's it going to come from? One idea I had was, you've got these hundreds of billions of dollars that corporations are keeping overseas. Why not a tax holiday for bringing that money back if you invested in communities like these that need that investment?
Congresswoman, your thoughts. I know you people in the Hill, and especially in the caucus, which is the nickname for the Black Caucus, of course, worry about this stuff. But yet, you know, the Humphrey Hawkins bill every year comes out, a different budget plan coming out from the Black Caucus. Obviously, the inner city is the reality that Gene talks about. Kids, the only business plan is the drug dealer coming down the street saying, here, I got a neighborhood for you to cover. I mean, that's an awful way to put it, but who else is coming down the street with a plan for you if you're a young kid?
Well, actually, I mean, you're right. In terms of the Congressional Black Caucus has a jobs plan that they've put forward every year. Every year we put forward an alternative to the budget. But if we had that dream world with both houses of Congress being with Democrats, the first thing we would do would be to pass the president's jobs plan, of which he had, that would have directly impacted the inner city. There were proposals in there for job training. There were proposals to rehab houses. So if we look at it, we know that infrastructure is one of the first places to go, but there's other things that have to happen too. In all the years that we incarcerated so many people, you know, we've blocked people from employment by banning employment if you have a felony or a record. And if you look at the arrest record in Ferguson, you know that a lot of those kids, not only are there not jobs right now, but a lot of them might even be prohibited from working if there were jobs.
Look, Marion Barry, most people have a mixed view of the guy. I have a mixed view of the guy. I like him, but I have a mixed view of him. One thing he did in this town of D.C. was give kids summer jobs.
Exactly.
And you wouldn't be hanging around convenience stores, shoplifting if you had an income coming every week and you're proud of yourself. No,
it had a huge impact, the summer jobs program here in D.C. And I meet a lot of people to this day who say, you know, that was my first job. And they've gone on. Marion Barry, exactly. Marion Barry gave me my first job.
Is that true,
Exactly.
Congress? Well, tell us
Right,
about it. I like witnesses. Tell us about it.
Well, absolutely. It was in the early 70s. I got a job with CETA, Comprehensive Employment Training Act, I believe, and that was my first real job. And you know what? It was interesting because on the anniversary of the War on Poverty, we went around and talked to members of Congress, and there were an awful lot of us that got our first jobs through those programs. And that's a perfect example of what we could be doing now.
What happens if you go on the floor tomorrow or when the Congress comes back and actually give an impassioned speech, which I'm sure you can do, about this case? Let's not talk about the police. That's part of the problem.
Right.
Let's not talk about the justice in this case. That's up to the jury, ultimately. But let's talk about the injustice in society economically. The kids who grow up in the wrong neighborhoods, I mean economically wrong neighborhoods,
right,
do not have a break coming to them.
Right. Absolutely. Well, you know what? I have no problem making that impassioned speech. And one thing that I believe we will do is that we'll have a special order hour where, you know, we can speak on the floor after votes on the Monday when we get back. Yeah. The Congressional Black Caucus does that fairly routinely. But there really is a lot that we can do. And as you know, Los Angeles went through this 22 years ago. You have that underlying bent-up rage that happens in these cities, and then you have a spark that ignites it, and you have Ferguson today.
Let's go back to the president. The congresswoman said the president has a bill. I've never been impressed by it. It doesn't seem to be macroeconomic, big time enough. You got to be, to me, you got to ask for what you want. I always tell young kids, ask for what you want. They'll give you what they're willing to give you. Exactly. But ask for what you really want. I don't think there's enough there.
Well, no, I'm with you on the theory. You know, you don't ask for nothing, you don't get nothing, right? Yeah. I mean, and that's the way of the world. So I
ask for a penny, nobody's going to give you 2 pennies.
I think you should always go big, and and then you get what you can get, but you'll never get it if you don't ask for it.
You know, look in the 1930s when a lot of white people got a lot of jobs from the government with the CCC and a lot of that other stuff and the NRA, and a lot of people who had high unemployment then compared to the minority community today, really, and they got jobs, and nobody complained that these were make-work projects. Well, everybody wanted those jobs. Your thoughts?
And you know, the sad thing is that we all know our infrastructure is crumbling all across the country. In Los Angeles, we just had a major water break at UCLA. So there's so much that we could be doing if the political will was there.
Well, you ought to ride the roads of Washington more often like I do. Even here in the nation's capital, it is rugged out there. You feel like you're in a buckboard. Anyway, thank you, Congresswoman, so much for coming on. Karen Bass of Los Angeles in California. And